Welcome to Pit Pastor Barbecue. I am Colby, your pit pastor. Today, we are smoking a pork butt. This is an 8-pound butt. We're going to get a binder on it. I'm using yellow mustard today. I'm also going to be using Heath Riles Honey Rub and Heath Riles Apple Rub. I also melt down a stick of butter in a mason jar, put it in the microwave, get it melted down, and then I inject it into the butt. So we're going to get all this stuff started and get out on the pit. Now I'm using a ugly drum smoker that I built last year. We're going to get the fire going in that thing, and we're going to get this butt going. Okay, so I got you in here so you can see what I'm doing. I take a stick of melted butter and I just stick it inside the pork butt, and I just shoot a little bit, drawing it out. Now you're going to get some leaking out. That's okay, because it'll just end up being part of the binder. But when I started doing this, it just started making the pork butts so much better, so juicier on the inside. So we injected this with some butter. I'm going to put a light layer of mustard on here. Now you don't have to worry about the flavor of mustard. If you don't like it, you don't have to put it on here. You could just use the butter. Just put a little bit more butter on there and let it stick. But you don't taste the mustard when it gets done, so it's not something that you really have to worry about. What we're going to do is we're going to put a layer of apple rub and a layer of honey. Get this thing covered up, and it'll make a nice bark on here. What we're going to do is we're just going to throw this on here. We're going to let it sit for a little while we get the pit fired up, and we're just going to make sure that this gets all sweated in, and we're going to get this fired up, get it on the pit. So we're going to get a basket of briquettes lit up. I'll use Kingsford today. We're going to get a tumbleweed thrown in there. Okay, so we got a hot basket of coals in there. I'm going to throw a couple chunks of apple in there, and we're going to go ahead and get these butts on here in a few minutes. We're going to get the temperature up to about 250, 275-ish. Okay, so we got the temperature. The infrared showing it at 255. I dialed the openings a little bit back so that it doesn't get too high. I don't want it up into the 300s. So I got the pork butt on. What I'm going to do is take a little bit of the rub. I'm going to take a little bit of the apple rub, and where I picked it up, you can see my handprints. So I'm just going to put a little bit on there, cover it up. That way I get a good seasoning on all of this. We're going to close the lid. We're going to get back after it, check it out here in about an hour, and see what kind of bark I got on. So it's been an hour. We are just going to check it out just to see how they're looking. You can see they got a nice color to them right there. The rub is still pretty moist. All right, so we've been 2 hours into this smoke right now, and we're going to take a look at the pork butt, see how it's looking. You can see, I mean, it's got a great color to it. I'm just going to do a probe real quick just to see what the internal temperature is. It's sitting at 130. So we're going to let it go for another hour, and then we're going to check it and see what kind of temp we have. All right, we're back here at the pit. It's been 3 hours since this butt went on, and it is looking great. Now I did an internal temp check, and it is sitting about 150, 155. It's somewhere between 150, 160, I guess, is when you grab it and you wrap it. Now what I do when I wrap them is I put them in an aluminum pan. It just sits down in there nice and neat, doesn't make a mess. And so I just take the butt and sit it right in the bottom there, and it sits perfect. I don't have any problems with it. I don't get juice all over my pit when I'm doing it. I like using these containers to put them in, these pans. It just makes it a lot easier. Now I put a little bit of barbecue sauce. It's whatever barbecue sauce I have available. I just happen to have Sweet Baby Ray's barbecue sauce, just the regular barbecue sauce. I put a little bit of that in, not a whole lot, because I don't want it to be just nothing but sauce. So I'll put a little bit on top there and kind of let it sit into the juices once it mixes in while we're going. And then I also take a little bit of the spice that I put into it, the rub. This is Heath Riles Honey Rub. Just put a little bit of that on there as well. And then we just wrap it up. We just take the foil and put it up over the top. Wrap it up tight. Get it so that it is in that real tight. And then we're going to stick a probe in it, get it back on the pit. We want to pull it. I'm not going to look at it. I'm not going to touch it until the probe shows me that it is at 205. and then I check it to see the tenderness. Now, while we wait for the pork shoulder to finish up, I wanted to bring some scripture to you, because what kind of pit pastor would I be if I didn't bring you a little bit of church, right? So I just want to give you a little bit of a Bible verse out of Acts chapter 2. See, today a lot of people think that the church isn't needed. While it's true, going to church and your church attendance is not a salvation issue. It doesn't add to or subtract from your salvation. It does encourage you when you go around other believers, as long as they're believers that are encouraging, which we know sometimes they're not. But when you're around a group of people that are encouraging, it really increases your drive and your desire to want to be more Christ-like. And so we look in Acts chapter 2, verse 42. It says, they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, to the fellowship, and to the breaking of the bread, and to prayer. Now, when we look at this verse right here, you can just take this one verse and pull out all kinds of parts from it. When they heard this, now who was they? Well, this is the early Christians, and they were the ones that were hearing what was going on in the church, and they're like, hey, I want to be part of this. This church is making a difference. They're doing stuff, and I want to be part of that. Devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching. Now, the apostles' teaching is an important part here, because this is what they were learning. And so they had to go to the church, the group. Of course, back then they didn't call it church, but they had to go to the group in order to get the apostles' teaching. They wanted to know more about what was being taught. To the fellowship. Now, this is the organization. This is the group of people that got together. This is to the fellowship of people that were getting together. And so they committed themselves. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, to the fellowship, to the breaking of bread. Look, if we're meeting, we're eating. That's my church's philosophy. If we're meeting, we're eating. I didn't get this body by being picky either, right? So we look at this and we say, hey, listen, we need to devote ourselves to the teachings. We need to devote ourselves to the fellowship. We need to break bread. We need to spend time with people. We need to get together, smoke a pork butt, and take it over to the local church and say, hey, I just want to share this with you. Find your pastor. Hey, as a pastor, I know that it would be great if somebody came up with a rack of ribs and said, hey, I just want to bless you today. And then they devoted themselves to prayer. Folks, that's the most important thing that we can do right now, especially in today's society, is we've got to devote ourselves to prayer. If you're not praying, you're missing out, because this is God's link to us. This is how he talks to us. And when we pray, it can't just be a grocery list of things, like the things that we want, and it can't be a chore list for God. It has to be a two-way communication. So I want to encourage you, as you pray, listen. See what God's got for you. The Inkbird says that it's sitting at 208. I usually take a handheld probe just to check it out, just to make sure that we're sitting at actual temperature. And more important than the internal temperature is, I want it to just slide right through. I don't want there to be any resistance at all. And when it just slides like butter, you know it's done. And so it is showing up at 210 in that spot. So we're looking pretty good here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it out and set it in a cooler. It's just an old cooler. It's nothing special. And I just set it in that cooler and let it rest. And it just sits in there and it gets happy. All the juices flow back down to the middle. We'll get it on the cutting board and we'll pull it, and we'll start eating. So we'll be back for more in a bit. All right, we're back in the house now. The butt was on this smoker for about 7 hours, 6:45, 7 hours. And we pulled it off here, and I'm telling you what, it smells amazing. Now, one way to check it to see if you're done is the internal thermometer comes out completely clean. That's that bone right there. I'll tell you what, that thing is clean. So I'm gonna take this over here. Oh, it's falling apart in my hands. So this is pulled pork. We'll just recap. Look at that smoke ring on there. Nice bark. Oh man. Recap what we did here. We took the pulled pork. We injected it with a stick of butter. We put mustard on it for a binder. We used Heath Riles honey and cherry rubs, or apple rubs, sorry, honey and apple rubs. We put it on the smoker for about 3 hours. Once it got to about 3 hours, about 155, 160, I wrapped it. I put it in an aluminum pan, and we wrapped it up. And at 208, I pulled it off. And here we got it. This stuff is just falling apart in my hands. So tender, so juicy. Oh man, this stuff is gonna be so good. This stuff right here looks so good. I'll tell you what, I'm gonna dig into one of these pieces right here. This one right here. Oh man, that might be the best one I've ever made. Give it a shot. Try it on any smoker that you have. Use a Weber kettle, use a drum smoker, pellet smoker. Doesn't matter. Just get out there and give it a shot.